Today we are reviewing A Long Way Gone by Ishmael Beah, and it was first published in 2008. Oh, first published in 2007.
And then this edition was in 2008.
And I first read this book.
Go on. Tell the
Probably in
verses.
2015, and Rehu first read this book in 2020.
And you read this book how many times? Go on.
I read this book. This book was actually recommended to me by my boss, and I read it in 2015, and then I recommended it for the book club, and we read it together again in 2020.
And this was actually my first introduction to literature that speaks to, civil unrest, what's happening in other countries, like wars, tribalism, and all of those. So I really enjoyed learning about that specific history lesson, to put it like that.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I think me too. When I first read it in 2015, it was probably the first time I actually saw a picture of what other people in other parts of the world are going through with the civil unrest, with war, and obviously how it affects lives,
Especially
families.
that of young children. The disruption, the loss, the grief, and most importantly what the book speaks about, which is being forced to join the army as a young child, because I think the composition of the armies in parts like Sierra Leone is more comprised of young boys and girls.
So anyway, so this book is a memoir. It's about Ishmael Beah when he was 12, and he had to flee from his home, and to survive he had to join the army. And I think when he first joined the army, he thought he was saved. He thought, but it just happens that life wasn't done with him. It had to beat him up again. Okay, sorry, I'm not laughing. It's a very sensitive issue.
But this is the story of Ishmael Beah's childhood, how aged just 12, he fled from rebels attacking his village to wander a violent land before being conscripted into the army, where he learned that he too was capable of terrible acts. Once he emerged, he decided to tell his story, a story of the loss of innocence and the power of redemption. This is the first-hand account of how wars are now fought by children on drugs with AK-47s. In more than 50 conflicts going on worldwide, there are an estimated 30,000 child soldiers. 300,000. Thank you. 300,000 child soldiers. Ishmael Beah was one of them. And of course, these are the facts at the time of being published. I don't know what the facts are now. But the book also does give a nice history and facts and a chronological event. Chronological. This corner. Yes. So it does give a recollection of, the facts about what is happening in that country, how many children at the time of being published were forced into joining the army and all of that. So it really is a good read. It gives you insight into what is happening in that country and around the world.
True.
Did you enjoy the book?
I did enjoy the book. I did, and it's a very heartbreaking story. I mean, to go through all that and come out brave, and you still want to do life. It's commendable.
It is commendable. It's a good quality of his.
And I think part of me wants to say that I'd read this book again if I had a chance, but I know I won't have a chance because I've got other books that I need to read. And Yeah, is it a book that you'd recommend to somebody?
I've recommended this book. Like, it got me excited when I first read it, and I recommended to everyone who was willing to listen. And I think because the writing is light.
Yeah,
it's
it is
easy.
light. It's easy to get through.
It's not,
you don't go to the dictionary a lot of the times to see, what's
it's
happening.
easy to follow. His writing is very, like, it's light, it's easy reading that you can get through, but the details, it's the details of the book that will just touch and just make you feel a bit more compassion than usual. But I think that also needs to happen, because we need to have an appreciation of what is happening around us, so that we can reflect on our own lives and be like, listen, it could be worse. It really could be worse.
And just to add, when I was doing some research, like when we were busy preparing for the book review, and I read an article that had said that people were actually saying that some of the things that were being said in this book were exaggerated. That some things were not as they happened. Like, what he said was not as it happened, And for me, when I read this book, I don't find anything that was unbelievable. I found that everything was believable. And I mean, if you're fleeing war, I imagine that you don't pick a toothbrush or whatever, and then obviously you had to walk for maybe the writing. I don't know why would somebody suggest that it was exaggerated. Probably maybe he too or she too has experienced the war. I don't know.
But from what perspective are we questioning someone else's lived experience? And this is not necessarily a question to you. I'm just wondering, and maybe it would have been helpful if I had read the same article, but I'm just wondering from which perspective are we questioning it? Because he, as the writer and the teller of the story, he can choose the level of detail that he wants to provide us with, the level of detail that he's willing to process and put into this book.
True.
So that's really just on him. But I suppose each to their own. Now, there was not a moment that I did not believe, that I doubted him. I really think it was believable, and I admire his qualities. Like, I feel like he was able to still remain true to himself. The young kid that we were introduced to before that fateful day, when the rebels attacked his village, was a young boy, an innocent boy, a kind boy who was hopeful, and yet he remained the same throughout. Yes, he experienced bad things, and there's trauma and PTSD, and there was some acts of violence and all of that, but I feel he was still able to live through those experiences and then come out as his greatest potential.
I think part of that is because he had people who supported him, into being a better person, into being human again, humanizing him. And because, like it says in the synopsis here, or the summary, he says that what does it say? He learned that he too was capable of terrible acts. So I think with people that he met, like the nurse, Esther, and the uncle who found him, or did they find him? Yeah, and he took him in, and his family was very generous in sharing their home and into welcoming him. And I think that whole support structure shaped him again. Like, it reminded him of who he was and his values, and also and it gave him a second chance. It really gave him a second chance, because he could have gone back. Because remember, without giving away too much, when he was living with his uncle, there was another war or was it civil unrest or something happened
that led to him now fleeing to America.
Yes. So something happened, and he made a decision then that if he stayed, he was
Yes.
afraid that he would go
End
back.
up into the army.
Yeah, because those were the options. I mean, his friends would want to kill him if he didn't want, because he learned that. He learned that some of his friends were already going back, even though they were rehabilitated. So,
yeah, I think it's making me think about Outliers now, because Outliers speaks about the book by Malcolm Gladwell.
yeah.
It speaks about success and how time and place and the environment also plays a big role in how you turn out, because if Ishmael had not met Esther, if Ishmael had not had his uncle to go back to, right, life could have been a lot more different for him. But because I think those two people were like beacons of hope in his life, I can imagine how someone else without those experiences, who has gone through what Ishmael has gone through, could easily fall back into the army and just proceed with that life as it should be.
Yeah. But I like that he didn't feel sorry for himself, and he was just like, you know what, this is the decision that I'm making, and I'm going to find help. I'm going to be better, you know. So it's very commendable, and sharing a story like this is also brave, and yeah.
Do you think that's why he wrote it, the book?
Why he wrote it?
To share his story.
Oh yeah, I really think he wanted to share, and also maybe create awareness around what was happening at the time. And I mean, a lot of us didn't know about children being introduced to drugs and being, conscripted into the army and stuff like that. But yeah, now we know. And I mean, he also did a lot of talks about it after he came out, and
yeah, I do think perhaps the purpose might have been not just redemption, but also to just create awareness around the situation, because I suppose everyone who comes out on the other end has some responsibility to try and offer some support into alleviating the situation. Was there anything in particular that you felt that you enjoyed most about the book, or like a quote that you could have read, or a part that you enjoyed?
No, I don't have like a quote per se, but I've got like a favorite part. I think I loved Esther, and I loved that he was just there, to comfort him and to be his hope, bring him some, I don't know, to just show him that, there's light in the tunnel. This happened, but you could really come over it. Like it could be something that, you can
turn
survive.
into positive. Yes, survive is actually the good one.
Yeah.
Is that the part?
Yeah, that's my part. Like, I just loved Esther and what he did for him, and what he could. Because I think there were times when Esther would invite him for dinner, and and I think that actually brought him a sense of familiarity, because he was born into a family that did those things together. They had dinners, and they had just that bond where everybody was just always together, storytelling and everything. So yeah, I think that helped him to believe in himself again.
I think so. I also really I enjoyed Esther. I think she was very instrumental in how he turned out. So I don't necessarily have like a quote to extract, but I have a thing where scenes just stay with me in a book, and it can be really random. And then in this book, there's a scene where he tells us how they fled from one village and ended up in a village alongside the coast, I suppose. And it seemed empty, but I think it's because people had received word that young boys were coming, and at the time young boys in a group meant the army
or rebels.
Yes. So they were then apprehended by the men in that community. They were taken to the chief, and the punishment that they got not punishment, but the king sent them off without the make shoes that they had. So they had little makeshift shoes that they had. He took them off and chased them out. And he said that he did not realize the impact of that punishment until much later during the day. And that's where my scene comes in. It is on was it 113?
I'm not sure.
I'll tell you now. It is on page 60.
Oh,
Yes.
very early on.
Yes. So
No peeled flesh. No?
yes. On page 61, actually. It starts on page 60, but I'll just start reading from page 61, where he says, peeled flesh hung down, and congealed blocks of blood and particles of sand clung to each hanging bit of skin. It looked as if someone had literally used a blade to cut the flesh under my feet from the heel to the toes. So it's this particular memory where he described how burnt the soles of their feet were from having to walk that long distance along the beachside. Midday, the sun was scorching hot. They had no shoes on. There was no shade. The tide was too high for them to even walk into the water. So the only thing that they had to do was just to continue working. And the skin underneath just peeled off and was filled with sand. For me, I feel for a 12-year-old it's very, very horrific and painful. It could be painful for anyone. But for him at the time, at that young age, for me was just...
Gosh, it's too much. I mean,
I get.
Like already you can just feel yourself jumpa. So just imagine that. So, what are you rating this book?
I'll give it a 5 without a doubt. I enjoyed this book. I would recommend it to people to read it, just to create awareness and just to build a bit more compassion for what other countries are going through.
True. I'll also give it a 5 out of 5.
Good. I'm so glad.
Yeah, it's a good book. It was a good book. And I wonder if he has other books or if this was it.
That is actually, I don't think it says. So we'd probably need to Google.
Yeah, no, I don't think he has other books.
It doesn't say so.
Yeah, and I like that it has this thing at the back where, like, Life at a Glance, where they
tells
actually
us about him.
Yeah, where we actually see how accomplished he is now, and yeah, his career, and it's actually nice. So yeah, to redemption.
Okay, to redemption. But I think it's a good kickstart to our series of books that we'll be reading in March.
Yeah.
Where the theme really is more humanitarian.
Yeah, since it's Human Rights Month.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we picked that theme. We'll be reviewing A Long Way Gone by Ishmael Beah. We'll be doing
A Little Life by Hanya in the surname.
Yes. I don't want to be the one that says the surname. No offense. And then the 2 books by Khalid Hosseini, The Kite Runner and 1,000 Splendid Suns.
Yeah.
So we hope you enjoy it. And yeah.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Bye.